So, hello and welcome back to another Improvement Season podcast. Steve is nodding because he was just about to tell me that I am the one introducing this week's episode. And here we are, another week of the Improvement Season podcast. Steve, how are you doing?
I am fine. I'm actually much better. I'm better than last week. I'm surprisingly good, actually, considering everything. This is, been dieting 6 weeks now. And so 6 weeks into this meso. And to think I would always deload after like even 4 weeks in the past, now like 5 weeks more recently, but now I'm still feeling pretty good to continue going. Weirdly enough, one of the adjustments that I had to make to my training because of my lower back, which I think I spoke about last time quite a lot, where it wasn't feeling great. It almost feels like it's gone now. It feels like it's really healed up quickly, which is awesome. But I was doing straight leg deadlifts off the floor, and even when they weren't causing me any lower back discomfort or like DOMs in my erectors, they were fatiguing the shit out of me, like systemically, very taxing. I just thought, hey, it's a hip hinge. It's kind of meant to be that way, whatever. But since removing it, I'm like, man, it's opened up so much just systemic recovery where I don't feel like anywhere near as trashed.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's made me think, like the SFR maybe wasn't worth it, and I'm better off. I'm going to kind of stick to a short range of motion RDL type of movement, maybe with the like pauses, slower eccentrics, and kind of stick there. Because the cost to the rest of, I don't know, my day and everything else was not worth it. So that's been an interesting lesson. But Cliff did just reduce my calories again this week. So
where you're sitting at right now?
So I try and stay somewhat ignorant to it because he just adjusts macros. And so then you have to calculate it all out because he basically adjusts like all three normally. Yeah. So I think it's like a 200 calorie adjustment roughly. So I think actually, my low days, I know because I did it yesterday because he adjusted them yesterday. And I was like, I can actually adjust today for that, and I am below 3,000 calories now on my low days, so they've kind of been pinched down. My high days are probably like 3,005, I think.
Funny enough, I'm just right now in the midst of editing the podcast episode with Brent and Kempter, where you guys are talking about that as well, that it is still kind of probably the same symptoms that someone with lower calories is experiencing, because for you, this is low calories already.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's like, look how lean I am and look at my rate, like my deficit and the rate of loss. That tells you more than the calories I'm on. The calories I'm on actually don't tell you much apart from I have a bigger budget to play with. So I can if my hunger is manageable, afford to spend it on something a bit more frivolous if I need to. But there are days where I do not decide to do that because I'm hungry.
Yeah, I think it is actually a great analogy of comparing it with a budget, because that's what we did in the past, but also the other way around. Only because you have a big budget doesn't mean that the expenses that you have are the same as someone else's, right? Your budget may be much higher, but your expenses may be much higher because you may have a bigger house, you have a higher electricity bill, something like this, right? And then at the end of the day, you are ending up with the same amount of net available budget then as someone else.
Yeah, it comes back to like energy availability type of thing. Like when you're on a similar energy availability, it doesn't matter the like outside variables, you're probably going to feel fairly similar to someone else. But so it'll be interesting to see how this week goes. It's funny though, because we spoke about this Monday weigh-in thing with Cliff. And I hit some new lows last week, but my Monday weigh-in wasn't that low. It was higher than a lot of my weekly weigh-ins, and I was just like, God damn it! I reckon he's going to pinch some calories here. But
so you didn't actually manipulate it on a Sunday then?
No. I really am going to try my best. I say try my best to avoid that. I think subconsciously it could happen to someone, but I'm really going to try and avoid doing that because it just doesn't help at all. Because actually, what happened on Sunday? I actually ate quite a lot of my calories later in the day because, dude, actually, this is when you diet, you just get reminded of all the things you know, but you kind of forget until you diet again. So, for example, I know on Saturday, basically, I was feeling quite hungry. I woke up fairly early. I trained pretty early, which meant I got in meals earlier. And then there was I had a lot of time where I wasn't eating then. and me and Charlotte weren't doing anything. So we weren't busy. And so I was just able to be bored and like be like, I'm hungry, like I want more food. And that led me to overdoing my vegetables, where if my fiber goes above about 50 grams, my digestion just, you know, when you're just a bit more bloated, or like you are bloated and you're like, your morning poop isn't as good, stuff like this, that I know if I go above 50 isn't great. And yeah, my fiber got out of control on that day a little bit. So that wasn't great. And weirdly enough, then the next day, me and Charlotte went out for like a lot of the day, and we went for a coffee, and then we went and had a meal out, and I was like, whoa, like I've actually gone hours without eating here, and because I'm occupied and busy and doing things, like I'm actually fine, which led to me then having a lot of calories later in the day, because it was also a refeed day that day. And I was just like, it's crazy how much it's up here, like just mentally. If you're bored and hungry, you're probably not actually hungry, you're just bored, or like you've said before, like you're craving shit. And I think at the moment my hunger tends to come from more of a boredom place, if anything.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you would expect that it has also then changed over the years, because just as a comparison for me, I definitely had days where then out of boredom I was eating more, not always like calorically speaking, but from maybe the sheer size of foods. And this is something that I'm not doing anymore. Also, just like in general, the portion sizes in the past, even you kind of sometimes joked about then the portion sizes that I had in the past. It's something that I can't have anymore. Like also here for dinner, when I have like maybe a small salad, sometimes I'm even stopping eating because I'm feeling full. This basically has never happened in the past. This is something that has developed over now the past couple of months to maybe 1 to 2 years. And I'm very, very happy about something like this, which then also allows me to have, I don't know if then the others have a piece of cake, for example. I can easily have a piece of cake and then stop after having a couple of pieces if I wanted to. Or so, like a couple of bites, not a couple of pieces of cake. And I think that, at least for me personally, is so fucking powerful. This gives me so much strength and confidence. And also it has taught me, because I went through so much shit in the past, it has also then brought me to a point where I have like even more control than I had in the past, even though that there is kind of that short period of time where I didn't really have that control. I had that control. And I feel like for me personally, I'm in such a powerful position that something like, for example, having more vegetables that makes me bloated hasn't even happened in such a long time. And there were times in the past where I was so bloated each and every single day that it was so uncomfortable, actually.
I love that for you, because yeah, I've definitely seen it. Obviously, we've been together when you've been dieting or not, and you would always go for the higher volume. And like you almost, I think when you have dieted and have maybe perpetually dieted for a long time, there's something to being worried about not being like stuffed. Like you always want to be stuffed. And then as you move away from that, hopefully through extended periods of time, not dieting, gaining phases, and you appreciate not being stuffed and how that feels and how it's actually quite nice. And then you learn actually the stuffing feeling doesn't actually maybe even contribute more to hunger. It just makes me feel a bit gross.
Yeah.
And that is something that it's the same with me, weirdly enough, with chewing gum. Like in previous diets, like I'd be like, okay, I'm going to program a whole packet of chewing gum every day because I know I'm going to need that to like push me through meals and stuff. Actually, it just kind of makes me feel gross when I overdo chewing gum and stuff. So some of these kind of leaner living habits, like some of them aren't very nice, really. So I'm completely with you. It's the 100%. Same with, for example, like oats, like that I have. I don't want to spend fucking half an hour cooking them to make them volume maxed. I just want to cook them so they taste good and they do what they need to do. Like, I don't want to spend excessive time making meals, like, again, volume maxed in that sense. So I'm very glad you've got to that place. And yeah, I hope I hold on to some semblance of normality of dieting through prep.
Yeah, I think that you probably did learn so many things over the past years still. And they are probably subtle nuances that you don't even recognize or acknowledge during that period of time. But then maybe upon reflecting on the entire contest prep, you then realize like, oh no, I was actually eating much, much better. I was maybe eating much more, even though that I hate that term, intuitively, of like, okay, when I was full and I was still achieving a reasonable level of satiety that is normal in quotation marks, and not just like stuffing myself to the point of then having that satisfied sensation of like not being able to move or something like this. I think this will then come over time. And for me personally, also then once again, in regards to that feeling of being stuffed, it is a form of disgust nowadays. I don't like that feeling anymore when you are absolutely stuffed. And then by that, you can tell that the digestion will probably then be off after a couple of hours. And then you have like stomach cramps. You're just farting the entire time. And it doesn't really feel great. Nobody can tell me that this is a nice sensation to experience. And also, it is on another note as well, even though that I'm not the most social guy and I'm not eating out that often, it is helpful in that regard as well, because you now can go out to a restaurant, can enjoy that one meal, and you're actually satiated. Whereas in the past, you always knew that the portion sizes weren't enough for you, which for a small guy like me shouldn't really be the case. If you were someone like, I don't know, 130 kilogram jacked up guy, sure, absolutely, I can absolutely understand that then that portion size is maybe too little for you, but not for someone like me, 80 kilograms natural guy.
Yeah, I think it's partly why, like, I'm not justifying the reason I think some people are still, I'm not even sure if I can say I'm in prep yet, because I don't know how many weeks out it is, but it's 20, maybe more than that. I'm not sure. But I'm still having meals out with Charlotte like we would in my off season, like takeaway on Friday, and then on Sunday we go out for a meal. And some people are like, "Oh, Steve, you're in prep. How come like you're having pizza or you're having whatever it is?" And I'm just like, but I just basically have my normal day of dieting, and then I add the meal out, or the meal out replaces one of my diet meals. If I didn't do that, my fiber could get out of control. Like, it'd be very easy to make choices that would make it just like if I volume max that entire day. And I think that's kind of good because it's not putting me into that position, and I'm still kind of like straddling normality as well with that sort of thing. Because it happened to me when we went out for pizza and like going out for food, and I can feel it in myself being tempted to try and be like, oh, maybe I won't have that. I'll pick a choice that's going to be like more filling or bigger. It's like, actually, once I sit, eat it, and then leave it, I'm like, oh, I actually feel satisfied. Like, that was fine. I don't need to like stuff.
And I think that you bring up a very important point about leaving things and being capable of saying, no, I'm actually feeling fine right now. Or sometimes you may not even feel super satiated, right? But then if you know it in advance, you can always make the reasonable choice of like, I want to have a pizza, for example, right? I know though that an entire pizza may not fit into my macros here for the day, but I still would like to actually then enjoy pizza with Charlotte. So what can I do? Of course, I can choose, because I'm an adult, I have control over my decisions, to have half of the pizza, take half of it, the other half with me. You can still eat it. It's not going to waste if you decide to do so, right? And this way, you still probably had a good chunk of pizza, you enjoyed it, and then if you're still not satiated, you can actually then add maybe a small salad. Come on, each and every single restaurant has a small salad, and it may not be your most preferable choice here, but you also made the decision of like having a pizza, so it's kind of just complementing what it is that you're doing and balancing things out, in my opinion. And this is something that I always struggled with in the past, of leaving things at the table, so to speak. Whereas when I ordered some food, I always needed to have the entire thing. And this is, of course, absolutely rubbish if you really think about the words that I've used, that I had to, right? But I didn't really have any kind of self-control. I just ate it till it was empty. And because I knew that I'm that type of guy, I didn't even order that at all, or didn't even participate in it, which now looking back is of course absolutely a foolish way to go about it. You can have that pizza, even if it's just 1/4 of it. You can have a bit of pizza, right? It's about self-control. It's about kind of also realizing what is important to you and maybe trying to manage it accordingly.
Yeah, I can remember, I think it was a mini cut I was doing, and I was still trying to participate in all the takeaways and things that me and Charlotte were doing. And I just remember we would order the Domino's. I'd get my usual, which I think people think of like something like a takeaway Domino's, and they're like, oh, that must be like 2,000 calories. It's like, yeah, but that's because you have in your head, you get large stuffed crust with all the meat on top. I don't do that. I get a medium. I get the veggies on top. I get the low fat cheese. Like I have that as my order. But I remember and it made me feel sad, but happy at the same time, because I could have it, but I was like, I'm only going to have, I think I'd have 6 slices out of like the 12 or whatever it is. And I was like, it kind of feels sad, but the first thing I did was remove the slices I'm not having, put them in like a Tupperware, put them to the side. And then I'm like, right, now they're away from me. I don't have to think about them. It's all good. But I do think those elements that's just a great relationship with food. If you can start leaving food on your plate at like a restaurant and things, it's fine. I don't know if you had this at school, Pascal, but we had in our, at least at primary school, I was actually having packed lunches because I think I was a fussy eater probably, and I didn't want to have the canteen food. But my mum I think she used to give me like apricots, something like this, and I didn't want to eat them. So I would like throw them. I would throw them away, like throw them, I don't know. I don't even know where I was throwing them. For some reason, I have it in my head, I threw them on the floor, which just sounds stupid. Like, I hope I threw them in the bin. But because we couldn't leave the canteen hall until we'd eaten all the food that we had. That's what they ingrain at you, or they used to at school. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? Like
it is a crazy thing that has been with me as well. Of like, you are finishing the plate, which is of course now that we know more about things and also just raising kids, it is of course an inappropriate way of teaching them to eat. But there have been so many things, such as also, for example, a beating. I was still getting a beating when I was younger, and now we know that this is, of course, ridiculous to do, right? It can ingrain some hefty scars in kids. And also, going even back further, there was, and I don't know whether this was the case in the UK, but I would very much assume that it was, going even back further, adults weren't seated at the same table as kids. Also this, right, is now looking back in hindsight, of course, absolutely ridiculous to be doing, right? That you separate kind of the adults from the kids, like at home, maybe at different places, it's at events or so, it's more like a thing of like, yeah, we want to have the kids enjoy their surroundings, their circle or so. But now also they're looking back, it is absolutely a foolish way of raising kids. And this, of course, applies to so many other things in life as well. I have still a memory of my childhood when I was in kindergarten. But Steve, I told that story so often, not to you, but to other people. And now that I wanted to actually tell you about it, I'm not entirely certain whether this was actually happening the way that it did.
It's like old wives' tales. It just slowly evolves over time.
Because so in kindergarten, we also had a canteen, of course. In school, we didn't. So we needed to always take our lunchbox with us. But in kindergarten, it was also then like you need to have a portion of food there, which I can understand. If you are then going to kindergarten, you want to make sure that the kids are well nourished and that they are not just going through the entire day without any kind of food. So you had to at least eat something. So that one day, there were green beans, and I hated green beans when I was younger. Today, not so much anymore, but when I was younger, it was horrible, especially the way that they cooked and prepared it. It was horrible. And I do remember that they served it for 3 days in a row. And this is what I'm referring to. I don't know whether my mind is playing tricks on me, whether it was actually just one day, and I remember it as 3 because it felt like so horrible to me. But I do remember that they served green beans and I had to eat it, and I hated it.
Oh dear. I don't know why this is randomly brought into my mind. This is just, I don't even know why I'm saying it. But I remember on a school trip, there was this kid, he would get salt and just put salt on his plate and start licking salt off his plate. And I don't remember really thinking, I was like, that's weird. And the teachers were like, holy shit, this kid's going to like fuck himself up.
Yeah.
It's so weird what happens when you're a kid and like with food and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah. One more thing that I just want to mention to also add further weight to that discussion, because it just kind of, I think, is a good proof of how far I've come, at least when it comes to the relationship with food. So in the past, and I can't really recall how long I haven't had something like a Snickers bar, for example. And if you wanted to have a bar, then it was always a protein bar. This has changed for me like entirely over the last, also here, years. But I was still kind of not really buying something like a Snickers because I didn't really see the point in it. However, sometimes I have days where I end up with calories left over, or where just the others have something and I think like, hey, I have plenty of calories to spare. I can easily have like a small bar or something. And I was getting myself Snickers bars. And I can eat a Snickers bar, right? And those packages here are at least, you can still get a normal Snickers bar with a normal size, but you can also get those packages where there are kind of two smaller Snickers bar inside, like 40 grams, I think it is, right? And 40 grams is not a lot. It's kind of like that size of a Snickers bar. And I can still have only one and be absolutely fine and satisfied with that. I don't need more. I'm not running the risk of actually then craving more chocolate, craving more sweets, craving more to eat or anything alike. And I don't really think that this would have been possible like 10 years ago or something like this. If I would have had a Snickers bar back then, I could have probably from a caloric perspective, but psychologically, it would have driven me mad. I was like, shit, what am I doing here? I would have felt regret, I would have felt anxiety of like, okay, does that have deleterious effects on my scale weight and all that kind of stuff, you know? And I think like right now, I can easily have now a small Snickers bar. I don't even need to opt for something like a protein bar just to feel good about myself and all that kind of stuff. And I think that this is what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah, no, for sure. Having that ability to choose something like, I think it's easy when you get into the fitness industry and you get into macros and stuff to ignore like personal preference almost and just choose things for like, okay, macros and like volume and hunger management. And it's like, oh, why would I spend it on something that's just frivolous, just literally taste? It's like, well, because that's a sustainable way of eating to enjoy some foods. Like a Snickers is freaking nice and enjoyable. So I think being able to get there and then also have the ability to be like, hey, I can have one and leave it there. Like having one cookie out of a packet, hey, leave it there. That's such a healthy place to get to with your food. And
I also think, though, it's important then to also recognize that I could live with or without it. It doesn't really kind of make my life more joyful or anything like. It is tasting great in the moment, right? But if I didn't really have that Snickers bar, for example, would my life be more miserable? No, because I think that because you said the word of like enjoyment, and I think that many people justify eating a specific way because they are then having the connotation of enjoyment alongside with it. But you can still enjoy things without going fully into or giving fully into it or letting it control you. And I think that often when people are acting like this, there's a fine line between like true enjoyment and also more of a justification for bad behavior.
Yeah, I think it's just, I think what you mentioned there, having the control, like you're in control of all these foods. So you can choose if it's coming back to budget, you can choose if it's worth spending that extra cash on, or if actually like, nah, I can have, rather than buying, X expensive thing, I can have several of this other thing, and that's actually more appropriate for my goals right now, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And also, because many people are justifying then, I don't know, socializing and eating out. I just wanted to enjoy myself, and that's why I had like 10,000 calories of food. No, that's not how it works. And you can draw somewhat of a comparison. While I think that alcoholism is a little bit more complex in nature than with the example that I'm bringing up. if you were to simplify my example now, it's also there the same thing when people are saying like, I do enjoy my glass of wine each and every single day, or my bottle of beer each and every single day. Yeah, but could you live without it? No, because that's enjoyment for me, right? Maybe you're somewhat of an alcoholic at that point. You know, if you need that thing in order to enjoy something, instead of having this as an addition, maybe to the situation that you're enjoying, right? Maybe you're sitting at, I don't know, a campfire or so, and then having somewhat of a bottle of beer. And the campfire is actually the enjoyment, and this is just an addition to it, right? And I think that there's definitely a fine line between kind of justifying bad behavior and also pure enjoyment and true enjoyment.
It's interesting. It makes me think of flipping heck, why have I forgotten what it's called? The Phantom Menace, episode 1. Anyway, it came out, it was like 25-year anniversary, and we almost went to the cinema.
Yeah, almost. I saw that as well.
We didn't actually go, but it was in the cinema. We watched it at home, but it makes me think of the cinema, and a lot of people have this just habit of, they go to the cinema and they get a whole thing of pick a mix, or they have a whole thing of popcorn or whatever it is. It's like what you just said there. It's the cinema, right? It isn't the food. Like, you don't have to have this whole bag of like pick a mix, which as a kid, that's what I did. It was like, it made it an extra treat. But now I can go and enjoy the film and not have to have the whole thing. Or maybe I can substitute in like taking my own like low calorie popcorn or something that could be more suitable.
And of course, you bring also there up a good point that your environment is also sometimes dictating your behavior. Not just sometimes, but a lot of times. And this is also why so many people have a very hard time stopping, for example, smoking whenever they are then socializing, because in that social environment, they always smoked in the past, and now putting themselves in that spot again puts them, of course, in that environment where they tend to smoke in the past all the time. And that makes things, of course, much, much harder then, especially when you then have a positive connotation to it, due to then something like nostalgia. This is also because we've been talking about raising kids. One of the reasons why attaching emotional, maybe distress or compensation to food is never really a good thing. So, for example, rewarding someone with food, not a good thing. Punishing someone with food, not a good thing. Making someone or cheering someone up with food, not a good thing, because that emotion is then being attached to food. Whenever they are then trying to reward themselves in the future, they are then getting some food, for example.
Yeah, I'm sure you have this with clients where, and it's not all of mine, but I have a number of clients where their go-to stress relief is food. And that makes it really challenging because stress is part of life. Yeah. And it takes a long time to untie that. But it's just a case of working at it. And it gets better and better. But if you get it ingrained from childhood, that does make it a lot more challenging.
That's thing, for man. Sure. Let's take a short break and then be back with a lot more talk, maybe surrounding nutrition, maybe surrounding something else.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We created the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
Here we are back again. Steve, we are always at that point halfway through where we're then asking ourselves, like, has there been anything? Is there anything that we want to discuss or talk about? Is there anything that immediately comes to mind?
I was thinking about this. It's funny because we only put out this, like we said last time, we record on Tuesday, but the other episodes come out on Monday. So we don't have long for comments to come in. and for me to think about that past episode. But we had a number of people write YOLO, which I appreciate. And yeah, thinking about this past week, I can't think of anything that's particularly come out or that springs to mind about the industry as a whole, or I don't know about, has anything for you come up?
I think it has also a little bit to do with external factors for us at the moment. For me personally, there are lots of external factors going on, which then take my mind a little bit away from training and nutrition and being overly also observative over on social media of what's going on, because you have only that much time available and you want to focus on the more important things. And the same for you right now. Privately, there's lots of things going on, which then of course causes you to maybe not put as much attention onto what's really going on, what people are talking about. And I don't really think that is necessarily a bad thing, to be honest.
I think it's good now and then. Well, depending what the distraction is. But in general, it's good to have a break from social media and keeping up to date. Like we've spoken to Mike Chalice before, and I don't know, if I bring up a influencer on social media who's like within our niche even, and I can almost guarantee Mike is not going to know who that person is. And I'm actually jealous of that. Yeah. I think, unfortunately, because he's an online coach, you can be a little bit too detached, and that can harm your business for sure if you're not present. But there can be an element of being too deep in. And I think for myself, when I'm constantly looking for people to bring on the podcast, topics to talk about, it can sometimes feel overwhelming. So it's nice to kind of pull back and not be as focused on that. Hopefully that void is filled with something positive. It doesn't always happen to be that way, but I agree with you. I think it's also funny because there's just so much out there, like so much. I think about the number of people in our area, like for example, Milo Wolf, he's putting out 3 videos or 4 videos on YouTube a week. You've got Eric Helms, he's putting out like his podcast, he's on podcasts, he's got his own vlog going out too. And then you have like Mena Henselmans, he's putting out videos like, I don't know, every few days on YouTube too. And you obviously Mike Israetel, Renaissance Periodization, they're pumping out the content as well. And I've just had, I don't know if you ever get this, but clients will be like, oh, so X posted this, what do you think about it? And I'm like, oh, wow, like I can't keep up with all of this. I haven't watched it. I have no idea.
Yeah. I certainly had that in the past. And this is also, though, where it's good to sometimes be a little bit more detached, because you're then observing the things right in front of you and not the things with little context to it. So if you see something online, for example, you weren't the researcher, right? Interpreting things is always then up for your interpretation of the topic itself, the background of other maybe scientific studies and all that kind of stuff. So it's quite limited. And of course, we are then creatures that are quite impressionable. And the more external impressions and also opinions that pound down on us, the harder it becomes to really form your own thesis and your own opinion on something. And I don't really think that's a good thing, especially if you're a coach who is supposed to then mentor and also guide other people. You need to be quite clear in what it is that you try to provide, because it's only you and maybe then the athletes themselves who know where the journey is taking you. Right? So you have to come up with your own opinions, your own interpretations of things, and also your own methodologies. And it's not easy if then you're being influenced by so many other people surrounding you. And I've been talking about something like investing, for example, in the past. And this is a very, very good example of it, because investing is for many people a highly emotional thing. They, of course, want to then get the confirmation from others. So they are then constantly looking, maybe then via social media or other platforms, on getting the confirmation that they are looking. But because of this, right, other people have other incentives, they have other time frames, they have other goals. They are then giving their take on the matter, and you can be quite shaken in your maybe thesis that you had initially, and from what you invested in earlier and you had conviction now turns into something that is completely crumbling, and you then get out of the investment, and then it turned out that your conviction was right in the first place and your thesis was right in the first place, but you let yourself get too much impacted and influenced by other external factors. And I think now to draw it back again to training and nutrition, we may very well be guilty of that as well at many times. And this is why I do also believe that detaching yourself sometimes from social media is a blessing. If you then can just go to the gym and focus on you and focus on your training and not on, but XYZ said that I need to do the repetition in that kind of fashion. This is why I think that someone like Sam Sulek, while I'm not really following his content or anything alike, but I do know that his form wasn't really the best, as I've heard in many instances. But he's jacked. Of course, there are other factors that come into play, right? Compounds and stuff like this. But at the same time, maybe there's something to it that he just was more so occupied with going into the gym and training instead of then wasting at first time on social media or so. And this is just an example. I can't really say whether this really applies to Sam Sulek. Maybe he was also then online the entire time. But I'm just saying, like, someone may then spend a lot of time on a craft and perfecting it instead of spending half of the time on the craft and half of the time on social media, for example.
Yeah, I think this is where it's really beneficial to have a coach, actually, because then it kind of removes the noise, because it can be really easy if you're self-coached, especially if you're inexperienced, to just look up to all these people with more experience than you. And maybe they have contradicting views or different views to you. And then you do get pulled in all these directions, and then you really have doubt in your program. Whereas if you then have a coach from the outside who's just like, do this, and you trust that coach, then you can just go ahead and do it. And if they have, again, a good explanation, a rationale, like, you trust that because you've seen the evidence that they have with their own results, with their client results, and you're like, right, that person knows how to drive results. So let's stop this confusion of just looking into the space, and let's just act and do. And I can even relate to this because obviously Cliff right now, I just put a story this morning on my Instagram where I was just like, hey, it's so nice to check in with someone you trust and just be like, this is what happened. This is what I did. What should I do? And they just go, boom, do this. I'm just like, cool. Because it's so easy, especially in like a prep and as you're getting leaner, there's times where you want to push harder. There's times when you want to pull back because you don't want to eat less. You don't want to do more, but you also do. And you're like, what do I need to do? And you can be as rational as possible. You can try and put your coaching hat on, but it's so hard when you're self-coached in those sort of situations when there's a lot of emotions involved, and you can easily convince yourself to make a change when you maybe don't even need to. So it's just a huge stress relief to just be like, for me, at least with Cliff, it's just like, oh, it's so nice. He's just saying, eat less. I can do that. Great. I'll just focus on doing that.
100%. And this is also what I was referring to, right? That you may be caught up in something that is not even relevant to you, that you're just wasting a lot of time on. And I am guilty of that myself, of course. We all are to some extent. And I don't really think that you then need to go down that rabbit hole and be super, super extreme in your approach of like cutting, for example, time wasted products out of your life. I don't really think that this is needed or necessary, where you are then focused on trying to only do productive things, because what's the point anyway, right? I mean, like for real. If you leave a
not productive.
Yeah. If you leave a legacy behind you, sure, do everything surrounding that thing, right? If you can very much do something positive for the world, do that. But if it's something that we do, and this sounds a little bit weird right now, we are helping individuals, and I'm very happy that I have the privilege of doing that. But in 2 to 3 generations, no one will remember us anyway. No one will remember like, oh, Steve Hall, I've heard of him. He actually coached my granddad back in the days. He was
I'm going to sell
dude.
This company for millions, and it's going to go down in history.
Right. So this is why I think, of course, you can then still continue to help and do something good and all that kind of stuff. But you can also then waste time on certain things. I think it's just, though, there needs to be a balance between like, okay, not wasting too much time and having also then a healthy balance of like, I don't know, productive things in your life. And that may very well be kind of your occupation, then also maybe a hobby that fulfills you. And then it can also be something that is a complete time waster, such as we do, kind of watching some trash TV. Like, honestly, what's the point in that, right? But at the same time, I enjoy sitting on the couch with Katie at the end of the day and watching that. But the point, there is no point in that, to be honest.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes being unproductive is productive, as in it's stress relieving, it builds up capacity to then be more productive in future. Like going to sleep, people could call unproductive. Like you're not doing anything. You could be working for another couple of hours, but it's like, hey, recharging for 2 more hours gives me exponentially more productivity in future. So being able to switch off sometimes is so damn important. And same with, like, you could always convince yourself to do more volume and I would do this with my training, isolate my traps, forearms, like, I don't know, every single freaking muscle there is, my anterior tibialis, whatever it is, whatever's in vogue at the moment. It's like, man, but that, yeah, it's all really low fatigue stuff, but it adds up and it takes away time from other things for sure. So I think what I try and do with people when they do get a bit lost and confused is I boil it back down to like big principles. It's like, these are the big rocks we have to achieve. If you're doing that within your training, it doesn't matter if you're doing myoreps, supersets, clusters, shorter rest times, longer rest times, slower eccentrics, faster eccentrics. Like, so long as there's like progressive overload, sufficient volume, sufficient intensity, bosh. Like, yes, details matter, and you can definitely individualize that, and you can get it in a better position. But if you're doing those big things, like, don't stress, especially if progressive overload's occurring. Like, then tinker things ever so slightly. Don't 180 because you've seen, I don't know, a new video come out that says your rest time should be. That came out, didn't it? The rest times meta-analysis, or
I didn't see that, but
preprint.
It's a great point, and this once again ties back into what I said about investing. Most people are probably better off in just investing and leaving it at that, letting it run in the background. And I think it's also, there is a direct comparison to most people are probably better off in having a solid program there, sticking with that one for a very, very long time instead of just program hopping. Right? And then chasing the latest new kind of shiny investment or shiny new project, because this is how you're not making progress. And if you then were to stick with a very minimalistic and simplistic program, you will still learn and you will progress a lot about yourself, of what's good, different techniques and all that kind of stuff. You don't really need to change your program in order then to figure these things out. And once you're at a more advanced stage, and you perhaps also there learn the market a little bit more, have learned about things, then you can maybe diversify and i.e. Add certain aspects to your training protocol that then may add more progress or not.
It reminds me of a question someone asked on my Instagram recently. It was like, Steve, you've managed to make progress as an advanced bodybuilder. What have been the key things that have allowed you to make that progress? And I think when people ask that, obviously they come from a great place. It's a good question because it allows me to reaffirm what is important. And I think they want, like, I don't know, I started taking ashwagandha, or I started to include, I don't know, pauses in the lengthened position or lengthened partials, or, I like all these various things. But it all boils back down to the big rocks. I just consistently did those. Any little minute changes I did, maybe they add up and they become something convincingly important. I had that discussion coming out with Brandon, actually, which I think was a really great discussion. But I can't convincingly say it was definitely X, Y, or Z because there's so many things going on. But what I can convincingly say is those big principles had to continue to be in place. I still had to get enough sleep. I still had to take some rest days. I still had to manage fatigue. I still had to train really hard and do enough and progress that over time and eat enough protein and calories and try and be in a surplus for the majority of the time. Like, that is the big players. And the things people struggle most with is staying consistent with that. And that's what ultimately actually drives results.
And this is also why I am so grateful for something like bodybuilding and what it has taught me, because I was also probably more impressionable when it comes to marketing. And whenever someone is, for example, let's take now an influencer, and I'm just referring to a random influencer with a random product marketing kind of story or something like this, where then this individual is saying like, oh man, this has really taken XYZ to the next level. It has really cleared up my gut, for example, or that kind of bullshit claim that one single product is supposed to be doing, right? And in the past, I would have probably also then go as far in saying like I was always skeptical, but there are definitely also certain products and certain things that you are falling more so prey to as well. We can't be helped, of course. But what bodybuilding has taught me is that most of the things aren't as they seem. Most of the things are actually bound by long, consistent work, like lots of effort and all that kind of stuff, instead of kind of chasing new shiny objects, looking for the quick answer, the quick solution. Never has there been any way of doing this, right? And this is what I'm so grateful for that bodybuilding has taught me. Critical thinking, seeing through those kind of shitty marketing schemes as well, and knowing that this is most of the time, even if I don't know the product, I can with 99% of certainty say that it's just over-promising, under-delivering.
Yeah, definitely. The skepticism I have because of bodybuilding and like evidence-based practice towards other things in life, like you can just smell the bullshit immediately in their sales tactics. You're just like, I'm not convinced by that. Yeah. And the crazy thing is some people talk with such certainty. And when people do that, it immediately throws up red flags for me. Like when people are like, this is the way, this is what you have to do, black and white style of talking. And it's unfortunately majority of people, I think really that appeals to them a lot, especially when they're uncertain about things. So I could see it being appealing to me if I was going into an area that I really didn't understand very well. It would appeal to me if someone was very certain, black and white answers. But I'm glad bodybuilding, and I know how that is not the case here, has taught me to be skeptical of that, because it's just easy to get trapped in that. And it's like, this is my guru who I follow and they give me all the answers, because that makes life simple. But unfortunately, it isn't that way.
Yeah, 100%. See, if you have still a little bit of time left, and I don't really want to just like continue talking about this, I just want to say one thing, because I caught up on the latest chapters on One Piece, the manga that is, and man, I know that you like Itachi and his background story, right? I
saw your story.
And I can say, and I'm not spoiling anything though, right? But Kuma,
you like some fat guy
with small legs.
Yeah.
But that's just the drawing style from Oda. Well, what it is that I wanted to say is it is crazy because that character has been introduced, I think, 15 years ago. And over those years, he has always been a mystery. And sometimes he came, sometimes he went again. And building that up, building that tension, and we were just talking about over-promising, under-delivering. It was kind of there. You build up so much tension over years that it's very hard to meet those expectations on who's that guy, what was his rationale, what was he driven by, etc., right? And it's crazy to then think that this guy is always, so the writer is always then pulling off those kind of things to maintain such a consistent high quality of a storytelling. It's mind-blowing to me. And also that he is still remembering to then answer those kind of questions, because as we may very well remember, like for example, Game of Thrones, let's say, right? There have been so many fucking plot holes and so many things where you were just like, why the fuck was that even in the show? What was the purpose of that, right? What's the intention behind it? Right? Like, for example, wasn't there also the what were the kings, the blue kings, like the walkers, the dead ones?
Yes, I know what you mean.
Wasn't there like a kid with kind of those walker eyes or so?
Oh, man, it's
what
been so long since I watched Game of Thrones.
Right?
But I have no idea.
That was in a very shorter time frame, right? And he pulls it off of like building that character up over 15 years, and then he brings it home with a banger of a character development and arc. It's crazy, man. This is the probably one of the best written character developments ever. Is
that a new tattoo? Do you need to get? That's going to
I
be a
was
big
actually,
space.
I was actually really considering that, to be honest.
Where would he go?
You probably need to go on the calf.
Pec. Oh, calf. Right. Yeah. You have a whole calf free, so
yeah,
plenty of space there.
But I'm just saying, because I know a lot of listeners are also then probably big fans of Itachi and his life story. And yes, it is tragic, but I mean, Kuma's he tops it all. And I know that you're not into One Piece, but I just wanted to talk about this because I had to. It was kind of like,
I watched the live action, so I really enjoyed that, and I might try and pick up the anime from the point of the live action finished. But
and then you just have like 1,000 episodes to go up until the point when Kuma's reveal happens.
In a few years, I'll ring you up and be like, Pascal.
Exactly, yeah. Like 7 years from now, Pascal, do you remember the time when we discussed Kuma? You were absolutely right about this. Yeah.
Actually, I did finish. What did I finish? Anime. I don't know if it is anime, but because Star Wars, the Bad Batch, and like Clone Wars, I don't know if they're animes or if they're cartoons.
I mean,
I don't
it
know
is
if they're
animation,
Japanese made.
you know. But it's not. I wouldn't really call it Japanese anime. Right.
That's the only thing I finished recently, because it was the May the 4th and the Bad Batch kind of finished.
There weren't really a lot of good shows recently, in my opinion, that I was kind of eager to watch and all that kind of stuff.
Demon Slayer's kicking back off.
Yes.
I haven't seen it, but
yeah, My Hero Academia is also coming back. I mean, there are a couple of ones that are right now in the release process, but these are these shows that I'm super, super fond of. Where it's more like Reincarnated as a Slime, for example, is right now running as well. But this is a show where I'm just waiting up until the entire season is out. It's not kind of, I don't have the itch to really then go for it, you know. Whereas something like Demon Slayer, I will watch on a weekly basis, for example. Or Solo Leveling was one of those things, watching on a weekly basis. But there aren't really many, right now at least, that are coming out on a weekly basis that I'm kind of very much eager to watch.
You might like, have you heard of Shogun?
Yeah.
So it was a book.
I wanted to actually watch it. I started the first 10 minutes and I wasn't in the mood of reading English the entire time. I can easily do it on anime, but I had kind of a hard time then watching the show there, to be honest.
It's mixed as well, so some's in English, some's in Japanese, so I don't know if that makes it more challenging, but it's fine. I thought I'd finished it after like episode 5 or something, and then there was another 5, and then after I finished episode 10, I was like, oh, so there's going to be another season, right? But that's it. 10 episodes all done.
Oh, right.
I enjoyed it a lot.
I heard only good things, so I definitely will watch it at some point.
It's the cultural aspect of like old school Japanese is just like, it's really cool. Like I like it a lot. It appeals to me, but it's also so backwards in many ways and quite misogynistic as well. But I love the accents as well, because I do listen to some anime in Japanese, but not a ton. But this obviously, that like particularly when the women talk in Japanese, like the way they pronunciate words and stuff, I'm like, oh, it's such a cool noise.
I find Japan, but this is also, I'm super biased. I've always loved Japan, as you may remember. I was always impressed by the culture. I was always impressed also by the language. I think it's a very beautifully sounding language. And it's so funny if you then watch normally always Japanese anime and then switch over to something like Chinese anime, it is at first very, very odd, because also there so this is only me, of course, right? But the difference from Japanese to Chinese, from a appealing aspect of the tonality, it is quite a night and day of a difference. I don't really like Chinese, just from the sounds of it, and Chinese anime, then it feels weird at first, but of course you're getting used to it very quickly, because it's just, to you, it's just noise in the background, you know.
Yeah. The time I remember it most is I watched Dragon Ball Super in Japanese, and the change of voice from Japanese Goku to and Vegeta and stuff from like the English, I'm like, oh, that's a really strange transition of like, they're very high pitched. Like this is actually, sometimes they have women, like Japanese women play, like Naruto's a Japanese woman. Like I can vividly see her, and it's quite funny, like to think that they get women to play males. I don't know if they do that in like animated for the oh, I guess Bart Simpson's a woman as well.
That's the one that I was thinking about as well, and there's probably tons of other ones that we don't even know about or heard of.
But I don't think I'm watching. Trying to think if there's anything else. No, there's nothing else where I've been particularly watching. Just rewatched The Phantom Menace, which I do love that one. Do you have a favorite Star Wars movie?
No, the thing is, Phantom Menace has a special place in my heart as well, because we were growing up during that time. I think I was 11 or 12 when this one came out, and I do remember that I played cricket, when I was younger. And that was in the Danish minority, so we had a cricket team, and we were always traveling over the Danish border to play against Danish cricket teams. And we were pretty good, so we played most of the time in the Danish championship. There was this one single time I always know, I do remember that Copenhagen always had fantastic cricket team. And at one time we then had Danish championships against Copenhagen, in Copenhagen, and we then stayed over, each and every one of us, at different places of those teams' players. And I do remember that we were watching Phantom Menace for the first time when staying over, and they were big fans. They had even like lightsabers, and it left a massive impression on me that they were so much into it. And then we were even able to then watch the Phantom Menace over in Copenhagen when I was young. So, and also Duel of Fates is just a freaking amazing song.
Yeah. That's the one I posed to.
I know.
Yeah.
And this in combination then with the last fight is just, it has something to it. And I do remember how much of a criticism Phantom Menace received when it came out.
Yeah, I loved like the pod racing's cool as well. Yeah. Darth Maul with his double lightsaber, like it's just unbelievable. And that fight scene was like so cool.
Yeah.
But I think my favorite is Revenge of the Sith, when Anakin turns, just because of the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan is just like gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
Especially
when he's lying there, you
Yes.
can see the rage in his eyes and how he then slowly shifts to the dark side just by the way that his eyes are then turning and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. That's for sure.
Because Obi-Wan probably is my favorite Star Wars character, just because he just encompasses what it is to be a Jedi for me.
That's true.
And I like that. And he kind of comes into his own in that episode. He just wipes Anakin. Like, I wish he killed Anakin, to be honest, because then, actually, no, I don't, because then we wouldn't have had all the other episodes.
Yeah, man, Obi. What did he do? I mean, he paid for it then at some point.
Yeah. It's funny, whenever I watch it, actually, it got criticized as well because people hated Jar Jar Binks. He's an annoying character, but he's meant to be an annoying character, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, I was just impressed even by the animation, like all that time ago, 25 years ago, and it's still, well, I guess it's been what's it called? They've improved it all.
Yeah, but mate, the thing is, CGI, it's so crazy that some of the things, like back then, looks amazing. And nowadays, some stuff just looks so fucking cheap. And I mean, take a look at all of the DC and Marvel stuff that has lately come out. Like, what is this? An abolishment, to be honest. Right? And also, so I love it when there's kind of a proper art behind it, but I do understand because it's a very costly process, of course, right? That many studios then say like, okay, we can't do it because it's just too much money. I do believe that the best trilogy in movie history is, of course, The Lord of the Rings. And just look at how much went into it. And something like this will never, ever be produced ever again. And when you take a look at, because I just rewatched it recently, also their anniversary, right? Some movie cinemas are then displaying that as well, with the Fellowship of the Rings. And just take a look at everything. Everything is so detailed. Everything is so well thought through. There has been so much love and craftsmanship went into that entire movie. Also, if you just take a look at how it's being done and all that kind of stuff over on YouTube, it's crazy. It's crazy. Something like this would never be approved, and no one would pay money for that anymore. Also, back then it was, and still is, it's very unusual to actually approve 3 movies at the same time. And also, for example, all of the orcs. These were all kind of masks and stuff like this. This looks still today freaking amazing. Why? Because it's real. Yeah. Right? And CGI most of the time doesn't really age well. It's just a matter of fact, right? Because technology gets better and all that kind of stuff. But those kind of things, those analog things, age as well because it is real. And it just looks amazing.
Where did you watch those? Because Charlotte hasn't seen them, and I haven't watched them.
So the Lord of the Rings were actually or are on Amazon Prime, so you can watch it there.
Do you have to pay or are they free?
I mean,
it doesn't matter.
If you are a Amazon Prime member, then they are free.
Oh wow! I didn't realize that. Damn, we're gonna have to watch it. That's gonna take us months to get through.
At least they have the license here in Germany. It could very well be that the license in UK is a different one, but I'm not entirely certain.
Yeah, I definitely need to watch Lord of the Rings again because
it's fucking amazing. Like, honestly, also there, very cool. This soundtrack, the characters, the world building, best trilogy of them all.
They continued it on Amazon as well, didn't they? Like they've got something that also like a prequel to it.
Man,
apparently it was good.
The Rings of Power.
I was told it was good.
It was also an abolishment for $1 billion. It was absolutely a joke. Absolute joke. It was a disgrace for actually then saying that this is even remotely close to Tolkien's work.
They had House of Dragons as well, didn't they? For
I
Game
didn't
of Thrones.
watch that one, so I can't really give that kind of any shit.
No, I haven't seen those either. But it's like all the new Star Wars as well. Especially like Grogu is about the best thing, and Mandalorian's the best thing that came from Disney and Star Wars. But I don't know if Disney didn't do the Clone Wars, did they? I don't know. I did enjoy the Bad Batch, but hey, anyway. I need a word now. What are people going to comment?
Is there kind of an abbreviation for Star Wars?
Star Wars? Yeah, no, I don't know. I think there's only abbreviations for like the various films, but no, I don't know of one for Star Wars. What's like a Star Wars friend? You Were the Chosen One. That's a bit long, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. And many people are like, how do I even write You Are the Chosen One? And we don't really want to provide any kind of massive challenges for commenting down below.
No, it needs to be easy, doesn't it? So, comment LOTR and what your favorite part of. You don't have to add this. Let's stop recording. I'm just rambling.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality and we know how to do it. And we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.